Hi, guys. We're back with Chomp. I hope you're enjoying it. I am really liking it. We only have 4 chapters left. So we'll read 2 chapters today. We'll read 2 chapters on Monday, and then we'll be on to our next book. All right, chapter 24. Once the weather began to improve, Sergeant Ramirez sent the searchers into action. 4 airboats, each with a police officer aboard, departed at high speed from Sickler's Dock. A sheriff helicopter carrying infrared equipment was flying in from South Miami, and the Coast Guard was sending a chopper from Opelika. Meanwhile, Raven Stark had locked herself in Derek Badger's motor coach in order to hide from the throng of news reporters who'd learned that the famed survivalist was missing in the Everglades. The reporters were trying to make a connection between Derek's disappearance and the crazed gunman who terrorized the crowd at Sickler's store, but a spokesperson for the police department said the 2 incidents were totally unrelated. The media frenzy got even more stirred up by the director of Expedition Survival. He blabbed to a tabloid columnist about Derek's bloody encounter with the Mastiff bat, sparking speculation that Derek had been stricken with rabies and was lying dead in the murky wetlands. Thousands of frantic fans posted messages on Derek's Facebook page and tweeted anxiously amongst themselves. Raven was miffed at the director, but back at his office in California, Jerry Germain remained unfazed. The executive producer believed that the publicity surrounding Derek's predicament, no matter what happened, would increase the TV audience for Expedition Survival. That would lead to higher advertising rates, which would lead to bigger profits for the Untamed channel. In the semi-tragic event that Derek indeed perished from rabies or some other tropical disease, Jerry Germain was preparing to broadcast a 2-hour tribute with highlight reels. The ratings would be epic from coast to coast. "Let's release a statement to the media," said Raven, saying we're confident that Derek, being such a skilled outdoorsman, is alive and well. "Not so fast," Jerry Germain cautioned. "It isn't such a terrible thing to have the whole world worrying about him. Remember those trapped miners down in Chile? When they got out, they were total rock stars." The comparison was flimsy. The Chilean coal miners had been true survivalists, the real deal. Derek Badger wouldn't have lasted 24 hours in that cold black hole without losing his marbles, as both Raven and her boss knew. "It'll be getting dark here soon," she said. "That'll slow down the search." Jerry Germain was cleaning his fingernails with a sterling silver letter opener. Engraved with his initials, it had been a gift from one of Expedition Survival's biggest sponsors, the company responsible for Pit Powder, an underarm deodorant for, quote, "the raw adventurer in all of us." Derek Badger refused to endorse the product, saying it smelled like rotten mangoes. "With a little luck, the cops will come across Derek before they track down this lunatic Gordon," Raven was saying. "If that happens, we're golden. Derek will be the top story on every newscast in America." Jerry Germain agreed politely. "Raven, dear, have you ever seen this reality show from New Zealand called Snake Diver?" "What does that even mean, Snake Diver?" "The star is a fellow named Brick Jeffers, and he's quite good on camera. Witty, down to earth, and seriously ripped. He does the blindfold parachute entrance like Derek, only for real, no stuntmen." "What are you getting at, Jerry?" "You know, worst case scenario." Raven was stunned. "You mean if Derek doesn't make it out of the Everglades, this guy would replace him on Expedition? This Brick Jefferson snake diving nobody?" "His name is Jeffers, and we're flying him in from Auckland for an interview." "I can't believe this." "Worst case scenario, like I said. It makes sense to have a backup ready, in case Derek can't do the show anymore." "Like if he's dead, you mean?" "I'm just saying." "Well, he's not dead," Raven asserted. "I just know it." Jerry Germain said, "Call me as soon as you hear anything." Then he hung up the phone and asked his secretary to make some calls. He wanted to know which restaurant in Beverly Hills served the tastiest New Zealand lamb chops. Wahoo was more patient than his father, but Badger was pushing him to the limit. "You call this a hiding place, mate? Keep your voice down," Wahoo said. They were hunkered in the thicket of sticky vines and cocoa plums. Derek wouldn't quit griping. He insisted his fever was worse. He prattled on about muscle cramps and strange tumors in his feet. Tuna fished in her tote bag. "Here, try these." She handed him 2 of the same chalky pink tablets that she'd been giving to Wahoo's father. "What's that?" Derek asked skeptically. 20 milligrams of an advanced formula. Rager's up 2800. "Rager what?" He made a face as he swallowed the tablets. Yet soon he stopped complaining about his aches and pains, and within an hour he was napping again. Wahoo asked to see the bottle. What kind of medicine is Braggers Up? I definitely need to stock up on this for Pop. Tuna laughed. It's not medicine, Lance. It's just sugar pills. What? Seriously, I made up the name myself. It's pure sugar, spelled backwards, she explained. I even printed up a label for the bottle. I don't get it, Wahoo said. You ever heard of the placebo effect? That's when doctors test a new drug by giving it to half the sick patients while the others get a placebo. A pill with no medicine, just sugar. Nobody knows who's on the real stuff and who's not. But here's the awesome part. Some of the patients taking the bogus pills get better anyway. It never fails. Tuna smiled and tapped her finger to her temple. The mind's a powerful force for healing. If you believe something can cure you, it just might. But if the pills are only sugar, why do you need them? Oh, I feed him to Daddy. Sometimes it quiets him down, Tuna said. He gets lots of headaches, too, and back pains, chest pains, neck pains, you name it. He thinks Rager's Up is some sort of fantastic miracle drug. That and the booze. Wahoo was troubled to think his own father's symptoms were mostly mental and could be cured by fake medicine. So basically, both our dads are whack jobs, he concluded glumly. Don't even go there, Tuna said sharply. They couldn't be more different from each other. She was right about that part. I better go check on... Oops, turn 2 pages. Check on Link, Wahoo said. You okay staying here with Dracula Jr.? Aye, aye, she crossed her heart and gave a salute. You go, we're good. Quietly, Wahoo slipped through the woods, pausing every few steps to listen. There had been no more random gunshots, no more voices on the breeze. Either the men they'd heard earlier had changed their course, or the wind had switched directions, smothering the sounds of their conversation. In his father's absence, Wahoo had come to feel responsible for the safety of everyone on the island, Derek, Link, and especially Tuna. It was a new experience being out of Mickey's shadow. Things looked different to Wahoo now that he was making the key decisions. Gut check time, as his dad would say. Link hadn't moved far from the glen where the kids had left him. He was sitting bare-chested with Wahoo's expedition survival jacket draped over his knees. I tried to walk, he said. No gas in the tank. He looked drained, and his breathing was still ragged. Food? He asked. Wahoo was carrying half of a granola bar. He gave it to Link and said, Good news, we found your airboat. Totaled? Nope, believe it or not, Derek didn't wreck it. Link's expression was one of pure relief. Miracle, he said. Wahoo was glad the weather was breaking. Slices of clear sky were showing among the clouds. Did you hear those gunshots a while back? He asked Link. Yep, they's ways off. There were men talking, too. Link shook his head. All I heard was some owl. Wahoo peeled back a corner of the bandage he had taped to Link's back. The bullet wound remained fairly clean, and there was no fresh blood. Still hurt when you take a breath? Some, Link admitted. Worse than before? Little. Wahoo was practically certain that one of Link's lungs had been punctured. It was shocking that a little piece of lead could put down such an ox of a man. Hang in there, Wahoo told him. We'll get you to the hospital. How far's my boat? It's a hike. Just stay here and chill. Link took a swallow gulp of air. How about the dude that shot me, the girl's old man? The police will catch him for sure. He'll be in jail soon. Jail? Link grunted. That's it? Can I ask you something, Wahoo said. Guess so. I know you don't like my dad, and that's okay. He can be a pain. But the other day when he was in the water and you were driving straight at him, Link hacked out a chuckle. Heck, I only meant to scare the man is all. I thought I'd really gone and run him over and put an old dent in my airboat. No way. You sure fooled me and Tuna, Wahoo said. Not your pappy, though. He wasn't one bit afraid. Wahoo had to smile. Don't go anywhere. I'll be back in a little while. You's just a kid. What you gonna do? Get us all out of here. Link chuckled dryly again. Here, take your jacket. It don't fit me anyhow. Listen, Wahoo raised a finger in the air. You hear that, right? I do. Airboats, a bunch of them. A hopeful spark showed in Link's eyes. I was you, he said to Wahoo. I'd and Mickey Cray would be the first to admit it. He wasn't much of a people person. He preferred hanging out with animals, with the exception of his family, whom he adored unconditionally. Because he spent so little time in social situations, Mickey wasn't good at behaving passively when the circumstance seemed to call for action. His experiences as an animal wrangler had taught him to respond on instinct, no fooling around. Psychology doesn't work when you're dealing with a stubborn 600-pound gator or a cranky 14-foot python. The task calls for sure-footed commitment and quick reflexes, not mind games. Mickey believed Jared Gordon's brain was less complicated than that of the average reptile. However, the average reptile didn't carry a loaded gun and guzzle beer. "Give me another one," Jordan barked. "I'm a thirsty soul." He didn't seem to mind that the beer was as warm as spit. Most people would have been groggy after drinking so much, but he kept the pace, trudging along in Mickey's muddy footprints. Every time Mickey glanced over his shoulder, he saw the pistol pointed at his back. "Don't try nothing funny," warned Tuna's father. "Whew, wouldn't dream of it." They'd been hiking for a while, and soon the sun would be setting. Mickey hoped that by now Link had returned to Sickler's dock and that Wahoo and Tuna were safe. A swarm of airboats could be heard in the distance, the search teams fanning out across the marshes. It was a welcome sound, but Mickey wasn't ready to celebrate. Once darkness fell and the chances of being found would be slim. The Everglades by night were a tangled, boggy maze. Searchers would be relying on handheld spotlights and pure luck. At the sound of the search boats, Tuna's father appeared to sober up. His shoulders pinched tensely and his steps got heavier. "This ain't working out so good," he grumbled. The plan to recapture his runaway daughter at gunpoint, which had seemed so brilliant in the early stages of Jared Gordon's beer binge, now looked like a big mistake. "They'll catch up with us sooner or later," Mickey told him. "That's a fact. Why don't you shut up?" Jared Gordon was no longer consumed with finding Tuna. He was focused on escape. Sucking air through his teeth, he said, "Just so you know, I ain't going to no prison." "You are if they catch you with that 38. How far's the highway?" "Too far," Mickey said. "Too far, too deep, too everything. We can't get there on foot." Tuna's father jabbed him with the pistol barrel. "That's okay, Sparky. I always got a plan B." "Does the B stand for brew?" "Huh. You're my ticket out of here. You don't even know it." Mickey said, "There's no ticket out, brother. The cops know who you are." "Don't matter. When they get here, I'm going to make them a deal they can't refuse. Your life for my freedom." "You watch too many movies." Jared Gordon was dead serious. "Like you say, they're bound to find us out here. If not tonight, then tomorrow for sure. And when they do, I'm going to stick this gun in your fat head and tell them to give up one of their airboats or else." "Which they'll do, because it'll make them look real bad if they just stood there and let me shoot you dead. Am I right?" "Go on," said Mickey. "Soon as we get a boat, you're going to take me direct to the big road." He was talking about U.S. Highway 41, the Tamiami Trail. "Then what?" "Then we say adios." Jared Gordon smirked at his own cleverness. "You drop me off on a nice empty stretch, and I disappear like a ghost. Sneak away to the Bahamas, whatever. There's a place I saw on the Travel Channel called Harbor Island. You can ride horses on the beach, and the sand, they say, is the color of an Easter rose. I could seriously get used to that." "What about your daughter?" "Oh, I'll come back and deal with her later. She's the cause of all this trouble." Mickey had no intention of letting Jared Gordon get away, but he played along. He said, "We should stop and make a fire. They'll find us quicker that way." "Fine by me, Sparky." Not far ahead was a patch of hardwood trees that promised higher ground. When they got there, Mickey started searching for dry tinder. Most everything was still soggy from the long downpour, and the funky ground mulch had been disturbed by some kind of animal activity. Mickey spied a single track in the dirt, and his heart began to thump against his ribs. It was a human footprint, belonging to a small person who wasn't wearing shoes. Mickey quickly smudged over the telltale mark with one of his boots. To Tuna's father, he said, "Too wet here. Let's look someplace else. It's wet everywhere. I'm sick of walking." Mickey strained to hear the engines of the search boats. It was hard to tell if any of them had gotten closer. Jared Gordon picked something off the ground and crowed, "Well, looky here." He was waving a lime-colored flip-flop with rhinestones on the strap. Mickey didn't need to be told whose it was. He recognized it right away. "What are the odds? Like 1,000,000 to 1. Isn't that what you said?" Tuna's father was gloating. "But this here's her sandal, Sparky. That means she's around here someplace, and I'm going to get her. 1,000,000 to 1. Huh." The odds weren't really 1,000,000 to 1, as Mickey knew from studying Ravenstark's math. Within range of Sickler's dock were no more than half a dozen tree islands, lush emerald groves rising from the pan-flat marsh. They were the most obvious places for a glades traveler to seek cover, as well as solid ground. But why did Link stop here? Mickey wondered. Did his boat break down, or was there some sort of emergency? One chilling fact was clear. If Tuna was hiding on the island, so was Wahoo. He would have never left her alone. For Mickey, the stakes couldn't possibly get any higher. The kids were nearby. It was time to do something. "Let's go find your girl," he said to Tuna's dad, and headed in the opposite direction of where the small footprint had pointed. Jared Gordon came up from behind and slapped the top of his head with Tuna's flip-flop. "Hey, you think I'm stupid or what? I got you figured out." Mickey balled his right fist. One solid punch to the jaw would knock the guy cold. He couldn't have time to pull the trigger. "I know what you're up to," Jared Gordon went on. "You want to take me down, huh? You want to be a hero?" Mickey shifted his balance. "I'm no hero." "What are you talking about? Do I look like a hero?" "Shut up and get your paws in the air." "Why?" "You got 3 seconds." "That'll work," Mickey said. He wheeled around, swinging hard, but the punch never got there. All right, chapter 25. Wahoo smelled wood burning and wondered if Derek Badger had built a fire. Maybe even a lame TV survivalist could scrounge up some twigs for kindling. But once he drew close enough to see the flames, Wahoo dropped flat and held motionless among the trees. 3 figures were visible in the clearing, and Derek wasn't one of them. Tuna sat cross-legged on the ground, her curly-topped head bowed. Beside her was Mickey Cray, his brow bloodied and hands bound behind him with vines. A stocky, stubble-cheeked man who Wahoo presumed was Tuna's father paced by the small campfire. In one hand was a revolver, and in the other was a small green flip-flop, which he occasionally waggled over his head. Even from 30 yards, Wahoo could see well enough to put detailed features on the blank-faced attacker from the nightmare, the one who chased Tuna around the Walmart parking lot. In real life, Jared Gordon didn't look like a zombie monster. He looked like a loser with a mean streak. The conversation rose and fell around the crackling flames. Wahoo could hear most of it. Jared Gordon's new plan was to escape with Tuna in Link's airboat, and he wanted Mickey to drive. "We'll crash," was Mickey's response. "And why's that?" Tuna's father demanded. "'Cause you brained me with your pizzoli, and now I'm seeing double." "Huh, nice try, Sparky." Tuna looked up. "Mr. Cray's telling the truth, Daddy. He's had a concussion for months, and you gave him another one." Jared Gordon scowled. "He can run the dang boat, just go slow is all." "Are you serious?" said Wahoo's father. "My head's about to split open." "You want a bullet to finish the job?" Mickey shrugged. Couldn't feel any worse. Again, Tuna spoke up. "Daddy, just wait a little while for his vision to settle. Then he can take us to the highway." Wahoo knew she was stalling for time, which was smart. Once darkness fell across the glades, Mickey could steer the airboat in circles, and Jared Gordon probably wouldn't know the difference. "Hey, I got an idea." Jared Gordon kneed his daughter in the back. "Give him some of your magical pink pills." Tuna didn't react. She made eye contact with Mickey and said, "Sure, why not?" There were 4 tablets left, and Wahoo's dad swallowed them dry. Jared Gordon tossed away the telltale flip-flop and plopped down to wait, as fidgety as a bug. To Tuna, he said, "I still can't believe you run off that way you did. This is the thanks I get after all those years? You sneak off in the night?" The girl's response was a whisper, but Wahoo clearly heard Mickey weigh in. "Say, Gordon, you must be proud of that shiner you gave her. Tell me, what kind of sorry-ass excuse for a man would beat a child?" Wahoo lay there cringing. "Lay off, Pop, before he loses it." But all Jared Gordon said was, "Shut up, fool." The flames were dying. Tuna found more sticks and peat, yet the freshened fire was still rather small, too small to be spotted by the searchers. Wahoo feared. The buzzing of the other boats sounded distant as ever. Jared Gordon complained that the beer was all gone, but nobody else had much to say. The sun slipped below the western horizon, and a buttery half-moon appeared in the east. It was the first cloudless sky in a week, and the stars began to sparkle as the night deepened. Still hunkered in the trees, Wahoo wondered what had happened to Derek. Had he done something to provoke Jared Gordon into clobbering unconscious, or worse? Wahoo struggled to steady his nerves and think of a plan. One wrong move, and his father might wind up dead. Jared Gordon tossed a pocket knife to his daughter and told her to free Mickey's hands, which she did. Jared Gordon snatched the knife back and said, "Time to roll. Them pills gotta be working by now." "Not yet, they aren't," Mickey said. "Too bad for you, then. Suck it up." Staying close to the ground, Wahoo frantically groped through the leafy mulch. He was hoping to locate a heavy stick or maybe a rock for a weapon. He listened to his father saying, "Gordon, I'll take you to the highway, but on one condition. You let your daughter stay here and wait for help." "No, I told you, she's real sick with the Floyd's disease. She needs a doctor, like right now." Tuna raised her voice. "Don't believe a word he says, Mr. Cray. I'm not sick, and Floyd happens to be the name of my hamster." "Adorable," said Mickey. "But I'll go with Daddy if that's what he wants." "No, you won't. Not as long as I'm driving the boat." Wahoo gasped as he thought Jared Gordon stepped forward and leveled the gun at his father's heart. "That girl's my flesh and blood, Sparky, and I ain't leaving the swamp without her." "Then you ain't leaving," Mickey Cray said. Wahoo was not prepared to watch his dad die right in front of him. Never in his life had he experienced such a powerful flood of emotions. Fear, dread, desperation, and rage. He wasn't as bold or impulsive as Mickey, but Wahoo's sense of devotion was equally fierce. He had to do something big, and he had to do it fast. In his own mind, it was never a matter of courage, but courage it was. Like his son, Mickey Cray didn't have a death wish. Yet there was no way he could allow Tuna to go away with her father. Not after what Jared Gordon had already done to the girl. If that meant Mickey had to take a bullet, so be it. At least the gunfire would alert Wahoo to the trouble. Where is that kid anyways, Mickey wondered. Lying low, I hope, playing it smarter than his old man. The roundhouse punch that Wahoo's father had thrown at Jared Gordon had never landed because Jared Gordon had seen it coming and clubbed Mickey with the pistol butt. Mickey had awakened with the second worst headache of his life. The falling iguana was more painful. And with his wrists crudely knotted together with air potato vines. He'd been lying to Tuna's father when he complained about seeing double. His vision was fine. He was merely scheming to get the man alone with him on the airboat, away from Tuna and Wahoo, wherever the heck Wahoo might be. Although Jared Gordon's gun was now aimed squarely at Mickey's chest, he didn't panic. He was waiting for Jared Gordon to realize that, being unable to operate an airboat himself, he needed Mickey alive if he hoped to get out of the glades. The incredible stupidity of shooting his only driver would have been obvious to a person of semi-average intelligence, but Tuna's father had far failed to impress Mickey with his keen logic. Mickey's other problem was his own anger and disgust for Jared Gordon, which he struggled to keep under control. Susan Cray sometimes joked that her husband needed a special filter implanted between his brain and his mouth to prevent him from blurting every single thought that entered his mind, such as when he called Tuna's father a sorry-ass excuse for a man. Probably not the smartest way to address a beer-soaked oaf with a loaded weapon. Now the same oaf was holding his gun on Mickey and saying, "That girl's my flesh and blood, Sparky, and I ain't leaving this swamp without her." To which Mickey, who'd grown annoyed with the whole Sparky routine, replied, "Then you ain't leaving." An epic gamble, as the kids would say, and possibly an epic fail, if Jared Gordon wasn't bright enough to see the foolishness of killing the one person who could guide his escape. "Well," said Mickey, "what's it going to be?" Jared Gordon didn't answer. He was peering beyond Mickey, and his face was twisted like a dirty rag. "Now what?" he growled. "Wahoo!" Tuna said. Mickey felt a sickening chill and spun around. There was his son, jumping up and down at the edge of the trees. He looked like he was being attacked by bees. "Wahoo, run!" Tuna shouted. Jared Gordon said, "Wahoo? What's that mean? Is it some kind of code?" "No, Daddy, it's his name." "Wahoo who?" "He's just a boy from school," Tuna said. "Sure he is, doing jumping jacks in the middle of the boonies." Jared Gordon distractedly let the revolver swing away from Mickey, who said nothing to give away his relationship with Wahoo. He understood that his son was trying to do. It was brave, but way too dangerous. Wahoo was hoping to draw fire from Jared Gordon so that Mickey could jump the man. "What's the matter with you?" Tuna's father called out. Wahoo stopped hopping. "What's the matter with you?" he snapped back. "Run away!" Tuna yelled. "No, boy," said Jared Gordon. "You get your butt over here right now." "Make me," Wahoo said. "Make you?" Tuna's father crackled. "See this gun, boy? See this phone, Mr. Gordon?" Wahoo held up Link's waterlogged cellular, which from a distance appeared undamaged. "I'm calling the cops and telling them exactly where you are." "No, you ain't, and how'd you know my name?" "It's got a GPS, too." Jared Gordon purpled with rage. He shook the pistol at Wahoo, who retreated into the hardwoods where he resumed bouncing like a cartoon kangaroo. "Hold still, you!" Jared Gordon hissed. "Daddy, leave him be," Tuna pleaded. "He's sort of sick in the head." "Yeah, well, he's fixing to be dead in the head." Wahoo's father hastily stepped in front of the gun. "Don't waste a bullet on that crazy kid." You're right, said Jared Gordon, and shot Mickey Cray point blank. Wahoo came bolting in horror out of the trees. Pop, no! Did he say pop? Jared Gordon grinned. No, we're getting somewheres. Oh no, I can't believe he shot him. Does he have a bulletproof vest on? I don't think so, but Derek Badger had gone off into the woods to relieve himself and wasted no time getting lost. He was peering up at the half moon, wondering if it meant he would turn into a half vampire, when another gunshot split the air. Hoping it was a signal from a search team, Derek aimed himself in the general direction of the sound. Thrashing clumsily through the underbrush, he began making up a script for the occasion of his rescue, which could be later reenacted to juice up the ending of the show. My harrowing Everglades adventure is finally drawing to an end, not a moment too soon. I'm completely out of food and water and dangerously weak after being attacked by a rare but deadly vampire bat. Its savage bite left me dazed and delirious, racked with fear. Why, at times I even imagined myself morphing into a real-life vampire. Hopefully the gunshot I just heard means the search crews are approaching and my ordeal is almost over. But it wasn't. A bulky shadow appeared in Derek's path, and he lurched to a halt. Cloaked by darkness, the creature was difficult to identify. A bear? A panther? But it produced a series of volcanic snorts that were unmistakably hostile. For protection, Derek whipped out his famed Swiss Army knife, a cheap replica of which was sent to lucky viewers of Expedition Survival, who correctly answered a weekly trivia question. Example, what does fried cobra meat taste like? Answer, chicken. Derek tested the knife's blade, which was barely long enough to slice a kumquat. Scram, he said to the mystery intruder. Another surly snort was the only reply. The thing made no move to flee. Derek was thinking of his decision to stage the Everglades episode without Mickey Cray's captive animals, to put the real back in reality. By using only wild critters, the beast was now blocking his escape. Probably never had laid eyes on a human. It showed no fear. Interestingly, Dax Mangold had faced a similar predicament in The Revenge of the Blood Moon. A mutant possum, the size of a St. Bernard, had cornered Dax deep in Slackjaw Forest, but the stout-hearted young fighter had used his vampire superheroes to subdue the monstrous marsupial by wrestling it to the ground and gnawing through its jugular vein. Derek wasn't sure that such a bold tactic would work for him, a doubt that was well-founded. Had he bothered to do any research about South Florida before his arrival, he would have known that the woods and marshlands had become plagued with wild pigs. These free-roaming marauders were descended from ordinary porkers that had escaped from farms, although the Everglades version was bigger, hairier, and more foul-tempered. The boars were especially dangerous, growing long, curved tusks that were sharp enough to kill. A funky heat radiated from the massive form confronting Derek Badger. In a way, the night shadow was a blessing, because Derek wasn't able to see the look in the creature's coal-black eyes. If he had, he might have fainted. Scram, he said again, and the boar did exactly the opposite. Derek tried to flee, but after years of French cheese and rich pastries, he wasn't exactly a speedster. The pig's tusk scooped the celebrity survivalist from behind and tossed him halfway up the trunk of a sabal palm, to which he clung like a terrified frog. After circling a few times, the hog puffed loudly and trotted away. To better secure his elevated position, Derek attempted to spike his Swiss Army knife into the bark of the palm. The blade promptly snapped off, and he hit the ground like a sack of beans. That's it, he thought dismally, brushing himself off. No more tree climbing for me. Mickey Cray looked up at his son and said, Don't tell your mom. How bad does it hurt, Pop? How bad does it look? Pretty bad. Jared Gordon had put a bullet through Mickey's left foot. The same one Beulah tried to eat, he noted sullenly. Tuna cried, Daddy, what's wrong with you? Have you totally lost your mind? The man wasn't taking me serious. Now he will, said Jared Gordon. Wahoo removed his father's bloody shoe and said, Oh, boy. The bones in Mickey's foot were shattered, and his big toe had been shot clean off. He winced at the sight. Now we match, he said to Wahoo. Not quite, Pop. You're right. I'd rather lose a toe than a thumb. Be still. Wahoo pulled off his T-shirt and tore it into strips, which he wrapped tightly around his father's foot. Hope you're smarter than your old man, Jared Gordon grunted. What are you doing out here, boy? Tell the truth. Working for a TV show. Wahoo didn't have to glance up to know that Tuna's dad was still brandishing the gun. What TV show is that? Jared Gordon asked. Tuna told him. The one with the Australian survivor dude? Jared Gordon snickered. No way, he's big time. The Krays are professional animal wranglers, Daddy. You mean like they can teach a polar bear how to ride a bike, stuff like that? Wahoo sighed and said, Never mind. Jared Gordon poked him. Your daddy's good to go. Now let's get out of here. In case you didn't notice, Mickey said, I can't walk. Yeah, well, you can still drive a boat. It's not hard. I'll teach you how. No, Sparky, said Tuna's father. You're going to be my chauffeur. Wahoo knotted his expedition survival jacket around the stump of a buttonwood branch, poked it in the embers of the fire to make a torch. Then he handed it to Tuna. Then he and Jared Gordon boosted Mickey upright, one on each side acting as human crutches. Tuna led the way as they set off on a short trek to the water's edge. With 6 hands scooping, Jared's being occupied by the revolver and the torch, bailing the airboat took about an hour. After a forceful group shove, the craft was safely afloat. Wahoo hopped up in the driver's seat and said, I can do this. His father frowned. Since when? I learned how this afternoon. Ha! No way, Jared Gordon said. Get down from there, boy. You let your old man drive. Move it. Mickey rose to his knees. Do what he says, son. He was in a major pain as Wahoo and Tuna helped him get positioned at the controls. Crank her up, Sparky, Jared Gordon commanded. Take us to the big road. We'll see, Mickey said through gritted teeth. The engine burped and stuttered, but it wouldn't start. He tried 6 times, waited a few minutes, then tried again. Maybe some rain got in the bleeping gas tank, he said. Or maybe you're just jerking my chain, Jared Gordon was glaring in the torchlight. Maybe you don't really want to get her started. Wahoo's father laughed emptily. Yeah, that makes sense. I'd much rather stay out here and watch my leg rot off than get to a hospital. He gave Tuna a look of sympathy. No offense, young lady, but your daddy's not the brightest bulb on the Christmas tree, is he? Knock it off, Pop, Wahoo said. Tuna cocked her head. You hear that? Mickey raised his eyes to the sky. Sounds like a chopper. Now Jared Gordon was steaming. Just get the motor running, now! Try it again, Wahoo told his father. This time the engine coughed to life, and the airboat's jumbo propeller began turning. Well, hooray, Tuna's dad muttered, though no one could hear him over the racket. Then just a sudden silence. No, 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 Jared Gordon was hopping with exasperation. Are you kidding me? Did you flood this stupid thing? Mickey said, Actually, I turned it off. What? You better have a damn good reason, Smarky. I believe the owner of this vessel wants a word with you. Huh? Tuna's father swung the torch towards the shoreline, where a broad-shouldered stranger loomed. Get out of my boat, he said. It was Link. Jared Gordon sneered. And who the heck are you? The man what you shot in the back. Yeah? Well, I'll shoot you in the front, too, if you don't vamos out of here. Tuna shouted, Daddy, that's enough. She lunged to grab him, but he shoved her to the deck. Wahoo helped her sit up. Where is that chopper? He scanned the sky anxiously. Give me my airboat, Link said, and he began sloshing towards them. Mickey Cray raised a hand. Easy, brother. It ain't worth dying over. Says you, Link was wheezing. Stop, Wahoo said. You'll get your boat back, I promise. But Link kept coming. Jared Gordon steadied himself against the propeller cage. He raised the torch higher to better illuminate the intruder, and with his gun arm he took aim. I warned you, Tarzan, he said. His mistake was taking his eyes off the Wrangler's son. Wahoo nailed him broadside with a flying tackle that carried both of them overboard. The revolver in Jared Gordon's hand went off harmlessly, and the torch flew up on the muddy bank. The option of doing nothing had never occurred to Wahoo, even for a split second. He was acting on gut reflex and pure adrenaline. There had been no time to ponder the extreme danger of tangling with Tuna's whacked-out father. The man plainly intended to shoot Link, and not just in the foot either. His pistol had been leveled at the center of Link's forehead when Wahoo had sprung at him. Tuna jumped in to help, while Mickey, cursing his crippled foot, watched from the driver's seat. The scene in the shallows was pure turmoil, a frantic thrash of arms and legs. It reminded Mickey of bull gators fighting. Link was trying to gain control of the gun as the kids struggled to subdue Jared Gordon, who kicked and flailed like a madman. Mickey couldn't stand being a bystander. He restarted the airboat and nosed it against the shore at an angle from which the propeller's gale-force backwish blew full blast into Jared Gordon's face. Incredibly, the man didn't go down. Somehow he got his back turned and held his balance. Soon he shook free from his daughter and then from Wahoo. Only Link kept his hold on Jared Gordon, though barely. The pain from the lung shot had sapped his strength. Mickey could see him beginning to wobble and wheeze, while the revolver remained firmly in Jared Gordon's fist. Meanwhile, Wahoo and Tuna were preparing to rush at her father again. Mickey shut off the boat engine and hollered for them to stay back. A rumble drew his gaze to the southern sky. It wasn't thunder. It was the helicopter, locked in a low hover, no more than a mile away. Its violet search beam was sweeping back and forth across the black swamp below. "Let's go, Sparky," Jared Gordon rasped. His shirt was in tatters and his face was clawed. The airboat slipstream had made a spiky nest of his hair. Mickey saw Link kneel and go down. The kids began hauling him up towards dry land, trying to hold his head above water. Jared Gordon fired into the air. "I said, let's go." Wahoo's father motioned him towards the boat. "Whenever you're ready." The helicopter was moving closer. Jared Gordon glared up at it. "They spotted our fire," he mumbled sourly. "Hop in," Mickey said. "I'll take you wherever you want." Wahoo and Tuna had placed Link on the ground and were working to make him comfortable. Jared Gordon waded to the shore and snatched his daughter by the jacket collar. Wahoo grabbed him around the knees, but got booted in the jaw and fell back. Furious, Mickey attempted to climb off the boat and help his son. His mangled foot was useless, and he tumbled in agony from the driver's platform. "Get up, you! Get up and drive!" screamed Jared Gordon as he slogged with his daughter towards Mickey. Wahoo rolled over and tried to call Tuna's name. She couldn't hear him over the din of the oncoming chopper. She fought to break away, but her father hooked a beefy arm around her neck. The gun he waved at Mickey Cray still crumpled on the deck. "I'm going to count to 3. I can't move, brother." "You will move, Sparky, or you will die." "But 1, 2." The counting faded. Wahoo rose to his knees and saw Jared Gordon hunched in a bright spear of bluish light, Tuna writhing in his grasp. The police helicopter was no more than 100 feet above. Under a halo of flitting insects, Jared Gordon appeared demented in the eerie cone of the search beam. Squinting like a shrew, he ranted and cussed up at the chopper, his drooling threats smothered by the heavy thump of its rotor blades. Wahoo knew what would happen next, and he knew he couldn't possibly cover the distance between him and Tuna's father in time to stop it. Jared Gordon aimed his revolver directly at the cockpit of the helicopter. Sick with dread, Wahoo almost looked away. Had he done that, he would have missed a truly unforgettable sight, one he could never have foreseen. Derek Badger exploded with a howl out of the woods. At a dead run, he bounded from the bank of the island to the bow of Link's airboat, from which he vaulted himself at Tuna's father, who stood there gaping in disbelief. The 3 of them toppled with a heavy splash: Derek, Jared Gordon, and Tuna. By the time Wahoo reached them, Tuna was back on her feet, and she was clutching the gun. Jared Gordon had worse problems. Gagging on swamp muck, he found himself pinned underwater by a plump, wild-eyed stranger, a stranger who, for some reason, was chomping him ferociously at the throat. Obviously, Derek Badger thinks that he is a vampire. So we have only got 2 more chapters to go. I can't wait. I'm curious to see what's going to happen with Tuna. I don't think she's going to go back to her father, but maybe her mom will come home. That will be a good thing. All right, so more on Monday night at 7 o'clock. Bye, guys.